Two. Hey guys, welcome back. This is Total Fitness Podcast. I am Matthew.
I'm Walter.
So today, once again, off topic of what our actual plan was. So we're going to push our future podcasts just a week in advance to talk about the more pressing issue, which has been, I don't know, what do you want to call them? Race riots? Protests.
The much needed protest that is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to preface this. You can tell what I am. I'm 22, I'm white, and I'm straight. I've never really had to fear for my life in terms of the color of my skin and my sexuality, whatever it is. The only times I've had to fear for my life were for totally unrelated reasons. So I'm just going to start with that, where, Walter, you can say your bit if you want.
Well, I'm also white, so I mean, I have this protective layer, shall we say. But I also know what it can be like. As a gay man, I have been chased down the street. I have had friends who woke up in the middle of the night to someone plunging a knife into them, and they lived. I have had other friends who were denied medical help because during the 80s, when the other pandemic was starting, there was no cure, and there was a hell of a lot of fear. And should we breathe around these people? We can't help them, or we'll catch it too. And I know what that kind of bigotry is like. But here's the thing. Unlike many of my brothers and sisters in the trans community and a lot of other gays, I learned how to pass very easily. And I think that that's something that, as a gay man or a woman, you sometimes have that ability to do. For good or ill, I don't know. I can't say. I just learned to do it. And did I do it out of fear? I don't know. Did I not change myself, or did I change myself? I don't know. I don't know how any of this stuff works. But some of my more feminine friends may have had a harder time. And certainly for my friends in the trans community in that time period, it was a lot more difficult. Their lives were threatened on a regular basis. And I'm sure that there are people who I lost track with who are no longer with us because of it. But protective coloring was a possibility. It's not possible that if your skin is a different color. You can't necessarily do that, except in some Hollywood blockbusters. I think that the history of North America, and to a certain extent the world, has been rewritten to make those of us who are white feel better about our past, our history. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed, because a lot of us don't even know. We don't even know how bad it was. And then we see this on the news and we go, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah.
So I think that that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I'm scared. I'm going to say right now, I'm afraid doing this.
Yeah. Walter and I were talking. I mean, I'm being very wary about what I say, because it's just how things are right now. Because of, again, what I am. Do I have the ability to speak out about what I'm seeing, or on the issue or whatever? And in my opinion, yeah, because I live on this earth, and when I see injustice, it's about the injustice of how shit's being handled, and how things have been handled, and how people have been, the lack of education that has been taught, or the lack of knowledge that has been distributed about our past, and what has actually been the main issues, and why we're still seeing this shit the way that it is, right? My main point with this was, and I've told this to Walter many times, people always say everybody has equal rights. Women have equal rights. Gay, lesbian, the LGBTQ community, they all have equal rights. Blacks have equal rights now. It's like, okay, first off, it's now. Second off, equal rights does not mean equal opportunity. And that's a really important note because this basically the moment of your conception, or maybe the moment of your birth, whatever you want to call it, you are already either 10 times further ahead of somebody or you're 10 times far behind them. It could be A, you're born to a wealthy family or a poorer family. B, it could be the color of your skin. C, it could be your sexuality. D, it could be you have some sort of disability, mental instability, or physical disability, whatever it is. You're looking at all these little things, even where you live. If you're born in Canada versus if you're born in rural Canada, or if you're born in the States versus Mexico, or it doesn't matter, whatever it is, there's no such thing, in my opinion, as equal opportunity because of how many variables there are from the second that you're born. Um, and there's a lot of people that would like to think that the world's perfect and that everybody's equal and everybody has the equal opportunity because you live in Canada or you live in the States. And that is just bullshit, in my opinion, because of, again, what I just listed. And if you don't think that, at least in, sorry, I'm not going to say just at least in North America, in the world, there is systematic racism, then you're absolutely ignorant. There is 100% systematic racism. There's 100% systematic discrimination to whatever. And it's not even noticeable half the time, or it's not even, some people don't even know that it is there. It's just that's how far ingrained into our society it is, that's what it is. And if you don't believe that, in my opinion, you're being completely ignorant. If you want to take over a point there, I've got to think a little bit
I mean,
more.
I agree. I was enjoying the listen. I agree 100%. I mean, oh, I'm going to do a Justin Trudeau and take a long pause. Um, uh, Only by walking in someone else's shoes you realize what they're actually going through. And I think that the American dream may be equal rights, equal opportunity, but that's not necessarily so. Um, I actually got into a bit of a disagreement in a class about that sort of thing the other day, um, because I don't think you can ignore the differences, you know, uh, but I don't think that they should be held as reasons. I mean, if you have cognitive disabilities, you cannot necessarily do the same sort of thing as someone else. If you have really bad eyesight, you're not going to be a pilot. Those are reasons that, because of the nature of the job, you should not get that job necessarily.
Right.
But what does the color of your skin have to do with it?
Yeah.
And yet, for the longest time, you could be a steward, but you could be the pilot.
Yeah.
And people were held back, and to a certain extent still are held back on the basis of, and it's not just, and I'll probably get shit for this, it's not just us who are holding some of those standards. I think ingrained, well, when I point to myself, maybe I should just point to myself because of my age. Maybe it's just us old folks that are doing it. But I mean, within the Black community, there's too dark. The concept of you're too dark, and that it doesn't just go for the Black community. It goes for brown communities as well. You know, couldn't the child be born just a little bit paler?
Asian too,
That,
right?
and that's wrong.
Yeah.
Because the beauty of the skin tone is the beauty of the person within it, not what it is or what it's not, or what the social construct is that says what's better or not better, because none of that is real. Um, if you want to talk about equal rights, the equal right should be a life filled with dignified happiness. And that's what it really comes down to. None of us should have to be afraid to be pulled over by the cops. None of us should have to be afraid of what can happen if we walk down a dark alley. And this goes for women as well as men. Why does a woman have to be more afraid of what she's wearing late at night than what a man has to be afraid of? And yet, that is also an equal right that is taken away from the female,
Mm-hmm.
and should not be. Um, there's a reboot that needs to happen to us.
Yeah. Well, it's when we're still in a time where it's like you see on Instagram, it's like this. So I'll just give you a hypothetical here. It's graduated from Harvard with 3.5 GPA and honors, whatever, but grew up to a broken home, no father, had a drug addicted mother, had zero money, came from a very poor community, and made their way, and they're black.
Mm.
Why do you have to mention that? Like you see it all the time.
Yeah.
You see in these headlines, black student or Asian student. You never say white student. It's like it's so like whatever. But it's like, why is that more important of an achievement than the fact they were able to actually come out of the situation? Is it because
I think I can answer that by saying how proud I was when the first uh, I learned about the first gay American ambassador,
right?
or the first gay mayor, you know,
Yeah,
premier, any of
yeah,
those things. So I needed, as a gay man, I needed to have that example placed before me to
exactly.
show that it can happen.
But this is
It's
what
that
this
that you
is what
need.
my point. Yeah, but this is what my point was, because yes, back when was that? The 80s?
But the gay
Yeah,
ambassador,
yeah.
well, he just gave up his job, so, and he's reasonably young, so I would say probably mid 90s.
Okay. Either
But
way,
historically, I don't know.
my point is we need to get to a point where that doesn't even matter because there's already going to be the past of that was already, Barack Obama, the
Yeah.
first black president, right? And again,
Yeah, so now we have the eighth black president, and so who cares?
well,
But we have
it's
to go
like,
through history to
do we
get
call
there.
Donald Trump the 44th or what is he?
Mhm.
Would it be
He's the
43rd
first
white
orange
president?
president.
Yeah, the Cheeto. Um, but that's it. It's like when do we get to that point of okay, it doesn't matter because the achievement of you being just you is more than this color of your skin, and it's going to take a lot of time. Like Walter and I were talking about this beforehand, and me personally, and from what my generation seems to think is that 10 to 15 years is when we'll see a big change. A year we will definitely see change in a year, but it's not going to be the big change that we're looking for, and it takes
November
time.
2020.
Yeah, that's a start.
Yeah.
It takes time, and it's generational, and I think people keep forgetting the big point is like, why are we doing this now? We already know it's bad. We know if you don't know racism is bad, then what the fuck are you? Like you're living under a rock, whatever.
Yeah.
We know it's bad, but what we're trying to do is create a better future for the next generation where it doesn't even have to be something that
That's
it's
wrong.
taught, it's known, but shit like this doesn't have to happen because we're already past it. We know the history of it. We've educated ourselves on it, and it should get to the point where, again, you look at somebody and you don't care who the hell what they look like. They could be president, they could be a doctor, whatever, and you don't really say, "Wow," because how many times have you heard stories of somebody going to a hospital and being like, "Well, yeah, this doctor treated me and he did a really good job and he was black or he was brown or." I'm like, if you personally, I've heard that story quite a few times from just growing up in
Mm.
my community, in my schools, in my people I've worked with. They're like, yeah, this black dude was my doctor, and he was actually surprisingly good. I'm like, why was he surprisingly good? He's a doctor. Of course he's going to be good. You have to go through school and a lot of shit to get to that
Yeah.
point,
Exactly.
right?
But, it's like the fact that what we were talking about earlier before we started taping. Um, Again, a generational thing.
Yeah,
When I was in high school, we did not learn about residential schools. When I was in high school, we did not learn about Japanese internment during the Second World War. When you were in high school, you did.
yeah,
And those are the changes that have to happen, you know, through the course of this, uh, what we're going through right now, this upheaval, let's call it that we're going through right now. Um, I'm learning a lot of black history that I wouldn't have learned
yeah,
otherwise. And Why am I learning it now? That's the question. Why is it
62
not
years
taught?
later.
Why is it only the odd movie of the week that comes out that teaches about what has been done to these people over the years?
Yeah.
Um, you know, and even then, well, I mean, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. But I mean, some of the history that put the people into those situations is not taught and should be.
Yeah.
Jim Crow states where there were curfews for blacks, where they could be arrested for being on the road after 8 o'clock at night. What is that?
Yeah.
You know, but I only know about that from watching the Green Book, the
Green
Green,
Mile?
the map, the one
Oh,
where
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
uh, and it wasn't like there's talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. It was just something that happened, and you had to sort of piece it together. That was one of the things that was going on
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um, it may even still be going on now in some states. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like, there's stuff that, again, I was extremely fortunate. I got to go to a school where they taught me really well. And pretty much everyone in that school wanted to learn more. So I took American history because I love history. My dad's a history buff, so I loved, you know, he was obsessed with the Civil War,
Mm.
and the Civil War was a fight about slavery. That's what it came down to, right? When you look
Or
into the deeper,
the losing side got to put up extra special statues and masks and monuments to
yeah,
the guys who were traitors to their country.
yeah. But even when you look at the start of the Civil War, and people tend to forget this, it wasn't let's abolish slavery because it's bad. It's let's abolish slavery because the Confederates are actually rising against us and not obeying what we're saying.
Mm.
This is just the point we'll go off of. Like again, I'm just very basic here. But that's pretty much what it comes down to is when I first learned about the Civil War in history, it was basically, it was to end slavery, which it did. But the start of it was never really, the first talks about all this was never that. It was because the Confederates wanted to separate from the Union.
Mm.
And that can't happen. We are the government, so we will fight back. And then it got to that point, and then that's when the slavery issue came up. And still, it was about, yes, it was about slavery, but the start of it wasn't, right? And you don't learn that from a lot of things. And then even going on TikTok, there's tons of people, and I love it because I tend to just, I have the humor of like, make fun of who you are, right? So some people, they'll make fun of the fact, the stereotypes of their skin color, Asian, black, whatever. Black dude, he makes a joke about, um, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a joke about the three-fifths law. And I had a friend actually, I messaged it to a friend because I thought it was hilarious. It was really clever. It was a really well thought joke. And I messaged it to a friend, and my friend was like, well, I don't get it. And to me, I was like, the three-fifth law. And she didn't understand what it was. She had no clue what the three-fifth law was. And that made me also realize a lot of, there is a lot of education, but there's also a lot of knowledge that is just being passed over because people just don't think it may be important anymore, right? So with that, it was like it made me realize, okay, it's not so much to just our schools teach about residential schools, the Jim Crow laws, all that, because when they do, it's typically you have so much to cover that it just passes over. So I understand the need for the core and the most important, but it gets to a point too where as educators you need to be telling your students or teaching your students to go learn for themselves as well. And that's what I really like about this or about yesterday, is that's what it came down to. It was so many people posting that black square, and then so many people getting shit for it because they didn't post any resources. And that made me kind of happy because it made me realize, like, Yeah, I mean, you post a black square, but what is that teaching people? At least some people are actually posting resources to actually learn more, to figure out what was going on, to figure out again the past, the how it can affect the future and what's going on now and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing in just any sort of protest is just educating both sides, and that includes, and please understand and really think about this one before you flame us out for this or flame me out for this, that if
I'm
you're
an innocent. I'm just standing here.
you
Ha!
it's not enough to just call somebody racist. You have to actually understand why they are racist. You actually have to hear out what their thoughts are. Because if you don't, then you can't change or you can't help them learn.
If ever I'm in an argument and the answer back is, well, you should know, you should understand what you did wrong, then I'm not able to grow. I can't just osmotic, osmosis, by osmosis,
Osmosis. By osmosis.
know what I may have done wrong or anything like
Yeah.
that. And I did run into this on TikTok where somebody posted something and I questioned it because I didn't understand. And the answer I got back, well, you should understand.
Yeah.
And I answered the person, I said, well, honestly, these things were not taught in school when I was around. And if you want my support and my understanding, please help to educate me because I'm asking you to educate me
Yeah.
so that I can be a better ally. And to simply say, well, you don't understand, um, does not allow me to be helpful to you in the same manner. And I would like to be.
What I think that issue comes down to as well is we have a lot of people over every generation. It doesn't matter how young or how old, that they themselves. Here's the beauty of social media. Social media is amazing because shit like what happened actually gets filmed and people actually finally see it. The destructiveness of it is, if you have a bias, you're only going to look for that bias. You're only going to search for people that agree with you. And there's a lot.
And the
Because it's
algorithm, the media is going to give you what you
the
want.
algorithm will show you more of what you want. That's how Instagram, TikTok, all that shit, that's how it works. The other thing is too, it's not so much as, back in the day we have a group of 5 friends. Walter decides to make a joke about me because of my eyesight. You know, whatever. And just hear me out. I don't have any disabilities, so I'm just trying to. Okay, let's say.
Oh, yeah?
So Walter makes a joke in a group of 5 people. Let's say he says something about, or I completely ignore that. I'm in a group of 5 people with Walter. I make a gay joke. Walter is there and he says, well, that's wrong. And then 4 other people or the 3 other people that are with him agree and they talk to me and they say, why are you thinking like that? Or it goes the other way where it's 4 straight people and we make a joke about Walter and he just silences himself. The thing with social media is it's the exact same. That's magnified by millions. Because it's not just 5 people in your friend group anymore that either disagree or agree with you. It's now 5 million people that agree with you or disagree with you. So if you're a racist and you're like, well, black people are bad because of A, B, and C, I guarantee there's at least there's a lot of people on this planet, guys, and I guarantee at least 5 million of them will probably agree with you. That's a big fucking number, right? And because that many people agree with you, you probably have this ego that you're right. And my main point here is social media is great again because you can see shit like what happened. It's really destructive because it's biased and the algorithm shows you what you want and it doesn't teach you anything really. So what I'm trying to relate to Walter's point was it's not enough to just say, well, you should know, because a lot of the time the person saying, well, you should know, doesn't actually know enough themselves. Because if they did, they would actually probably explain it to you a bit better. They probably have just, read an article or heard, they heard about a movement and they said, well, they think it's bad. Like a million people think it's bad, so it must be bad. And I think what the blackout was and why people were actually getting angry about just that black square was because that's pretty much what it came down to. People were posting the square without any resource or information, and they're like, "Well, take it down because it's not helping. Like you're pushing the algorithm to show only a black square instead of what actually matters, which is the resources and research and education and blah blah blah, all that stuff that's needed." So you have all the, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to say this. You know that because of the pandemic, I've been going on long walks, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to equate the two. Black square. Walter's walking down the street. He passes a business, and there's a rainbow flag in the business. The business is closed because of the pandemic. Walter keeps walking down the street, and he runs into a house with a rainbow flag on it. And over there's another house with a rainbow flag on it. Walter remembers all the rainbow flags that he saw, and the fact that there is solidarity, that there is a feeling of things are changing and the world is getting better for my tribe.
Right.
When I posted my black square, I was trying to make sure that anyone on my feed who sees me, I don't know what those are called, they might followers,
Yeah,
friends,
followers.
That's how old school I am. That they knew where I stand.
Right.
There were more than enough of those black squares that did have Black Lives Matter, and of course the sign saying take down the hashtag Black Lives Matter because you're screwing that up. That I think that enough people knew why I did it.
Yeah.
But I would hope that my black square is the equivalent of the rainbow flag that
Sure.
made me smile.
So I just want to bring up 2 points there. So my point was, so I agree with that 100%. I agree with that. My point is, you have so many people like, you should know. They say stuff like that, or they say the other part where it's like, take that down because it's not enough resource. It shows support, which is amazing. And I think through that support, there's education. My point with the other thing was, and I kind of like, this is kind of where everything was, what I was seeing yesterday. Sometimes it's not enough just to show support. You have to show, you need to show action, or it's like, okay, that's not true. It's always enough to show support, but there still needs to be education. Like if you just, because there's so many people that will just post something in support, but they don't actually know much about it. They just kind of do it because a million other people are doing it. So this is going to come out. This is going to come out really weird, and hopefully I can get back and scramble to a point. But you have. I had an issue yesterday where I posted about the square, and I basically said, if anybody donates to one of these causes, any cause, DMs me proof, I will give them a free personal training session. My idea behind that was A, I'm showing solidarity. B, I'm at least giving my time so people, because I don't have, unfortunately, because of COVID, I'm not making money at the moment. So I can't donate, but somebody else can, hopefully. And then I can volunteer my time to make it so they can actually, get something, whatever. I wasn't trying to gain anything from it. I just wanted people to at least donate or at least research and educate themselves further into the issue instead of just posting a black square and being like, Blackout Tuesday, whatever it was. I had somebody message me and basically say I was bandwagoning and I was being selfish and self-promoting. And she also went on to about 10 other people's pages and did the exact same thing. So I reached out to her and I explained my side of the story. We ended up reaching an agreement. She understood where I was coming from, and I understood where she was coming from. But the problem, right when I got that message, it did actually affect me. It wasn't like, right away I was like, oh, you know what? Let's reach out to each other and reach an agreement. At first I was like, well, are you serious? I am showing support, and you're giving me shit for showing support. Would you rather I not say anything? But you're also saying if you don't say anything, then you're not in solidarity. So there's a big issue with any movement. It doesn't matter that, we're just talking about Black Lives today. there is issue with just any movement that people will always have their own agenda. And that's important to remember. It will be on both sides or every side of the story. Sure, I could have had my own agenda of trying to self promote myself. That wasn't what I was doing. And I explained to her exactly what I meant. And she agreed with me. And, it was great. But for her to message me back and say, I apologize because I came off, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to get into it. But, when you have somebody like that is asking you to fight with them and then giving you shit for fighting with them because of whatever reason, that's tough to deal with. And that's my main thing with all of this is just you need to think more logically, less emotionally, because when emotion comes into play, it can really affect the words that come in your mouth and how people perceive you and how they can support your cause. The support needs to be there 100%. I mean, if you're not supporting it, then it's what you said, you're not really, right? Uh, but the biggest thing is just educating properly. And that includes, and again, I've said it includes going as far as sometimes you're going to get shit on, and you just need to take that and then civilly discuss the issue. You can't just go back and be like, well, fuck you. You can't just say that. You need to actually sit, have a decent discussion, a calm discussion. And sometimes through text that can be hard because text doesn't, you can't see somebody's facial expression. You can't hear their intonation of their voice, blah, 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 whatever. So, shit, man, if it's on Instagram, even go as far as actually sending voice messages or FaceTiming with them, sitting down, let them speak like Walter is doing right now. I'll pause, then he speaks. And then we talk about the main point of the argument. I'm not going to bring up something that will be like, well, you know what, Walter, because of this, you're actually not supporting it. I was like, okay, but that's not the main point here. The main point is what we're talking about. And so many people tend to get sidetracked on that. And I think it's just lack of education. My whole thing really in life is just there needs to be better education in the world everywhere. Hands down. It needs to be like everybody needs to be on the same track with education and learning the same thing, at least like a basic standard. Because state by state it varies. Some states you're not even allowed to read To Kill a Mockingbird because of the frightening or whatever fucking excuse they use. Because the black guy is what I mean, right? Yeah. Or in North America, or in Canada, sorry, it's like province by province they teach you different things. I remember a while back the sex ed was a huge debacle in Ontario because is it too young to learn about it? Is it too old? It comes to a point where proper education, it doesn't matter if you're too young or too old because it will be taught appropriately for the age group and you just learn more off that. It's not like you go into grade 1 and you learn grade 12 algebra. You don't go into grade 1.
Yeah. There was a time not that long ago where kids at 5 years old were working in the factories.
Yeah.
Was it too young? Who knows? Education, I don't think there's an age barrier that says, I mean, they may not understand it yet, but offering them the information is never going to be too early or too late, for God's sake.
And that's a good point because too young, who's born racist? Who's born homophobic? Who's born discriminatory? It's taught. And it's taught from a young age. So if you teach this shit from a young age...
I feel like I should sing Children Will Listen.
If you teach this shit from a young age, then that's already a step ahead of where we are now. Yeah. There's... I mean, again, like when's the first time I probably learned about racism? It was like 8 or 9, I probably started learning about it. Though as far back as I can remember. Maybe I learned earlier, but I doubt it. But again, that's because of the school I went to, and that's just how we, our teachers, sometimes just went off book. In a public school, it may not happen like that. Or, if you're not from an area where that is an issue, it may not even be brought up. Like, shit, man, rural Ontario, do you think they really care about that? They probably 1-2 black people in the community, right?
So far. Because when I was in high school, there was one black girl, Gladys. She was the one, That high school now has a huge black contingent. and I think that's going to be happening everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, um, as time goes on. So I think that the same we need to solidify the educational process so that it's the same
Yeah.
everywhere. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And let's even get it right. I mean, some of our American friends think they won the War of 1812, and that's kind of off too. So maybe on a
Yeah, most
global
people don't
scale,
even
get it
remember
right.
why it was the White House, right? So if you don't know, we burned it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, so that's it. I mean, it's the ignorance, it's the lack of education. Speaking emotionally can is it's but like I get it because how many times have I blown up on you during a prep because you're like you said something to me and I was just like, oh, fuck man, it's the same shit over and over again. It's the same as what's actually going on in the world. It's the same shit over and over again and nothing has really changed. So yeah, you're going to be pissed and you're going to be fucking like angry and you don't know you're going to want to hit something. You're going to want to yell at something. Someone, sorry.
It makes sense.
So I'm not saying, of course, like you can't do it. It's just we need to get to the point where that's not needed. And I believe it's through proper education. It's through, again, it's time, unfortunately, um, and taking people out of power who shouldn't be in power because they don't even say what needs to be said.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's my bit for today.
At any rate, we all need to be a little more patient with each other. We all need to show each other the kind of kindness that that we want to have for ourselves. I mean, I'm not Christian, but Jesus was right. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the main moral of my story, or whenever I speak to somebody, because again, I grew up in the time where I don't give a shit what you are, who you are, what you do. I'll always give you respect until you lose it because you're a dick. So just don't be a dick. And that is kind of like the moral of life.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So again, if you're listening to this, please like understand our point of view. If you guys want to have a debate, by all means, we can. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that because I think we spoke pretty well. But if
I
we,
think we did all right, but you know,
there's always somebody who will disagree, right? But if we
spirit of
did,
debate is good.
yeah. But that's it. Debate's good as long as it's civil. We want to hear what you guys think, and we'd love to actually talk and learn more. That's what this is all about: is trying to teach and learn more. We don't do this to teach people. We do this to actually help ourselves. So if you guys, have something to say, by all means, please understand though where we are coming from, because I know a lot of people will just kind of, again, they just kind of have their own bias and their own state or status and whatever the word is, and they just go off of what they feel, and they'll take what we say and they'll spin it so it fits their agenda. So make sure that you're feeling open and understanding where we're coming from, and we'll do the exact same. And that's what you should do with everybody you meet. Have an open mind. Try not to just take what people say to fit your agenda. If you see videos where shit happens in it, I'll just say this really quick in terms of the open mindedness. There's a lot of videos circulating on all sides where people will show police breaking into a store. The full video is actually police clearing the store so protesters won't get injured because the glass was sticking out and could cut somebody. The other side, where black people breaking into a store, it was actually white protesters slamming a skateboard into a store, and the black guy took the skateboard out of the guy's hands.
That one guy in outside of CNN headquarters
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who kept slamming his skateboard into the glass.
Yep. I think that's the
Like,
one I'm talking about.
why was he there? I don't understand. Why was he doing that? I definitely don't understand.
Yeah. So remember, keep an open mind. don't just believe every single headline you hear because, again, it could just be fitting somebody else's agenda. And that never helps anybody. You have to make sure that, as emotional as this is, educate yourself properly.
And let's face it, depending on whether you're in a place where your businesses are open or not open, you have the time to do some research. Take the time, do the research, keep
Yeah.
yourself educated on what's happening here, um, and send out love to everybody. That's all we can do.
And cookies if you have some.
No
I just
carb.
started a diet, sorry. It's on my mind.
All right.
Anyways, guys, thank you for watching again. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, DM us, send us questions if you have any, send us any response if you have any. We'd love to hear your side of it. Any shit, man. If you guys even want to come on our show and explain your side of the story in terms of what you guys have gone through, like through Q&A, we'd love to have you. Um, we do have a timeline of what we actually want to do for the next few weeks. It really just depends on how things play out, because obviously talking about fitness during a time of a national or worldwide crisis isn't really that important, right? So
It's a different kind of fitness.
different kind of fitness we're talking about here. So again, if you guys have any questions, DM me, Walter, and stay safe. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. See you later.